Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ayodeji Rotinwa. I am a writer, essay journalist from Lagos, Nigeria. And my idea is actually not my idea. It was a collective idea. What I said just before this. It is on a collective of or a platform for cultural journalism across the continent. So a few months ago, someone asked me a question and said, where is the one place you can go to sort of understand contemporary arts and culture in like a singular place to understand all of that? And I did not have an answer. And it just struck me how there is a need for that. And so a few, like 2 months ago, I was in Germany at a festival theater workshop. And it was supposed to be a writing workshop, but eventually with a journalist from literally across the continent, from Egypt, from South Africa, from Congo, from Tanzania, and we all more or less had the same issue, the same gaps, where there's no one collective place where you can read sort of documentation on the cultures in our countries or how they possibly connect, if there's any field that they overlap. And so we thought cultural journalism or a cultural journalism network was a way to sort of fill this gap, like a platform where you could go to. That's just a collection of ideas. I'll give an example, so maybe drive the points home. So recently I was commissioned to do a piece on a museum of Black civilization in Dakar. And I just realized that outside of when the Dakar Biennale happens, I don't hear anything about arts in Dakar. And I have like Google Alerts, Google News, like I have apps like to try and track these things, but they just don't come up. And it's not like they're not happening, right? But there's just no like source to find them. And I feel like, and we established at when this idea came up, that we don't have to get on a plane to meet each other. We don't have to get on a plane across the world, really, to discuss the things that affect us, to discuss the things that are happening in our countries, in our communities, as experienced or as communicated through the arts. So the idea essentially is this platform where we African Cultural Journalists Association, AfriCulture, should be a platform where I can go if I want to understand how, for instance, I think something that Jihan said yesterday about how Nigeria stood up for Egypt. I have never heard that before, or how Cameroon was once part of Nigeria and they broke away to form like these are things that these histories are like we are so connected, but there's no that one resource to find out these things. And this should serve or fill that gap. But to even sort of dial back a bit, so essentially the idea for this was to be journalists from across the continent in a collective sort of pooling their work, pooling their resources, critiquing each other, showing each other best practices, documenting. And so far, I think this was in June, right? We had this idea, so it hasn't quite worked out yet, because the thing is, which is like, I guess it's under like this marketplace, like how can this be done? Like, so how can, can this be possible? I think we first started with, starting a website where we can pool these articles, registering an association. But something that also struck me yesterday when Misla was giving her presentation, where she said, what is an ideal library? So I think maybe it might be to sort of zoom out a little bit, instead of trying to necessarily form an association where maybe you want to do workshops, you want to look for funding, to hold events, to just collect the information to begin with. Like if I want to, and with the idea that I had for my own ideal library, which could be like a cultural platform, whatever, is if I wanted to go, I would go to this place. I could find, if I wanted to understand what was happening in per visual arts in South Africa, for instance, I would go to this place. It would be cataloged maybe by years, possibly, by mediums, by movements. So you can go and say, oh, like if Abdullahi Konate is making art with textiles in Mali, using indigenous textiles, what does it mean that Yinka Shonibare, who's British Nigerian, is also doing the same thing? Like, is there a way for that to overlap? Is there a connection there? This platform could also serve. Sorry, I'm rambling now. I also think it would be useful for not even just journalists, but for artists as well, because I assume it's difficult to find. How do you know when someone like in another country is probably doing something that's similar to your work? Like, is there room for collaboration? Is there room to? Can this be a bridge for that? Also, this platform could also be standardized through. I wrote 4 categories here, like who is writing contemporary work about what's happening now? Who is analyzing art and culture through history? Who is doing more academic writing? Who is writing about art and culture in a broader sort of social-political context, which is how I personally like to write. Yeah, like, is that possible? But this platform, like going back to the original idea, what it was supposed to do was, well, it's a bit selfish, start with the journalist. It's to build capacity for journalists, because I don't think, like Enos mentioned during his, on the stage, that cultural journalism or arts journalism, like he said, is in danger, is not revered, is not given its due, essentially. And people, I was just saying to Millie earlier, I more or less learned I taught myself how to write. I learned how to write by reading, essentially. But how can we provide resources that capacity can be built? Like, how can people be, probably by other cultural journalists or writers, can be taught to write? Also, lobbying for resources. Like, why is it that, I was talking about, when we talk about journalism, cultural journalism is usually never in the room. Like, what opportunities are there? Where can you go and train? We're just talking just right now about going off for a year or 2, or maybe not 2 years. Maybe for a year, it's like write and to reflect and things like that. Are there those things? Just sharing best practices with like more technical things like style and form and things like that. And creating, but I think the most important thing, at least for me anyway, is sort of creating that sort of community where you know that when you want to, if you, for instance, you were interested in something in Nigeria, I want to write about something in Nigeria, you don't have to, like, who do I call, who do I speak to, where do I find information? Like this Dakar piece now, like I literally have to call a PR company in the UK to give me a number of someone who lives in Dakar. Like, so I was thinking about, like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, why do I have to do that? When, or even though Dakar is 3 hours away by plane, but even the bridge, without even leaving like my house or my desk or whatever, I have nothing to go to, and like when I hear, like just in the last 2 days, like so many things, in presentations, there's so many like commonalities, so many like things that we share, but that it's just not, because I guess the is just not being done. So we don't even know that, what is happening in, let's say, I think I was talking to someone about, what was it, like about how state governments are demolishing, like in Nigeria, they're sort of demolishing like historical art spaces or cultural or buildings, like in a particular district, and how it's not, unique, for instance, like to Nigeria. There's something that can be said collectively about that, which I think will have more of an effect, If I can say this problem exists here, exists there, exists, then it has much more of an effect. Yeah, I'm talking really fast now. I need to drink water. The platform was also supposed to be a database. So for cultural producers, when you have productions, you create work, how do you promote said work, right? Like who do you say, who I send this content to? This can also serve as a platform for that. Peer reviews, how-to manuals, organizing local events, publications, eventually, well, when we get there. But I think the most important thing, I think now, that probably might be just to start collecting the information first and sort of build from there. And that's it. I'm done. If anybody has any questions.
Do you know the project Music in Africa?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the portal?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys don't know it.
I know it, yeah.
And it's supported by, do you know it?
I was in the think tank.
The creator
So
is.
maybe you should, maybe you are a better person to explain what it is.
What is it?
What should I have?
Okay.
Music in Africa.
I think
Music in
it's,
Africa.
if I may, I don't think it's relevant talking about the project, but actually.
No, what I was going to say is that it's a platform.
Yeah, well, thing is, at some point it's good institute strategy to get into key sectors in culture for African continent. So it's a, I guess, seen as a neo-colonial move. Definitely is. And they got funding from Siemens Stiftung, and there's kind of policies in Germany about how you invest in culture, where we're supposed to come up with a whole strategy of let's say a medium term, where at some point there's a break away from the funder, where the initiatives become sustainable.
Mm.
That's what I came to question, and that's where I got out, because I don't think they ever wanted to let the project become autonomous. Anywho, so the Gravity think tank, I think it was 2012. I was part of it, so we gathered a bit of intelligence from different cultural actors in different sectors. We had someone from Cape Town come through, we had someone, well, people from Congo, from, I think there were like maybe 15 African countries represented. And the idea was to get a platform up that would centralize information on the music sector. But we did not know how to proceed, so that's why we wanted a think tank. So that's it. And it's kind of working now, but the issue with, I guess, that platform is that it developed through the Goethe Institute's monitoring. Whereas, when I hear you talk about that, I definitely did connect, but on the other side, what I think is relevant is to look at already the networks that exist.
Yeah.
Not just that one, but perhaps looking at the models and understanding why until now. And I think it's also because we at some point do not think about it. I know that in my country, for example, in Mauritius, I kind of make a point of networking with everyone. I run a forum for the festivals, make sure that the guys are planned a year to 2 years ahead, so that no one clashes, because we have a small audience, it's an island, and we don't want anyone to clash in terms of media coverage also, because if you're too big and you kind of, you can overshadow a smaller festival that will be relevant at some point, so it's kind of making sure that everybody's talking to each other. So that's kind of work I do in terms of networking, and which you're coming to. Now, I'm not sure what ideal model might be, but what it feels, or the set I have of what the good direction might be, is to try and get a key person in each country, like for Mauritius, I'm there, and maybe find a key person you can trust, and it's a matter of, I think going, if we are about reporting art, or reporting around art, I don't want to get into a critical analysis of performances or artistic practices itself, but it's quite subjective, and I guess to go around it scientifically might be like the best thing, you know, like, for example, I can tell you, like in Mauritius, how many, let's say, art actions there are over the year. And then go around it to tell that in music you have, let's say, concerts, for theatre there might be 12, in terms of book releases, creative writing, there might be 2 or 1, depending which languages, or maybe kind of get around a field, but you could send to your key person and they would look for the proper networks, I guess, or cultural actors that might be conveniently networked or that already do relevant work and that are trustworthy. That's one thing that I guess when you're not on a territory you might suffer from, being connected to someone that kind of shuts away information, does not give you access to what could actually be genuine and neutral and beneficial information or intelligence, depending on the vocabulary. And yeah, you start from there. And that's it. But you have so many countries already. And now, maybe, I don't know, Art Africa, that's something that just started with. It concerns contemporary art. I think that could be an interesting way to start. I don't know. But like again, maybe we don't want to get into contemporary art. Maybe we want to check like what artistic practice exists in different territories. Like for example, in Mauritius, theater it's very hard for theater. It's very hard for creative writing. People read less and less, so people don't really express through that. But I can see that music has been vibrant always. We still sell CDs in Mauritius, for example. Like in Australia, it's funny, but in Australia, the CD sales are still as vibrant, or maybe not as vibrant as 20 years ago, but still we use that medium to commercialize other music, but they also use the new technologies have brought through. But yeah, and I guess it's going territory by territory, but you need a key person. You need a key person. And I also maybe want to suggest that you have very critical-minded human beings that can remain neutral and that will give you information. And you want to have like the whole civil society, state sector, and private sector scan, not just civil sector practice or just private sector practice or state sector practice.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Tawa from South Africa. I'm very interested to participate in this discussion in as much as it talks to an aspect of like media development with a particular focus on cultural journalism. When I was speaking before the last speaker, there was a sense that like there's different concerns in relation to cultural journalism. I think I identified one as capacity building, and also a resource platform that could link different actors in different parts of the region. Like I would like to get a sense from people from different from other states as to in what form can this take up. So we talk about capacity building in terms of just practitioners in the media sector that are interested in a particular niche area of writing. So what would the program look like that benefits those kind of practitioners? So look, the cultural landscape it kind of ties in a field of practice, but it's also there are other sectors that are also involved. There's the economic sector, there's communication sector that kind of works around this field. So capacity development in terms of a program, like what kind of form would it take? What are the modules that would encompass those kind of interests? So a very practical way I think you can achieve that is about like you have you have an informal network of practitioners who are aligned to this theme. How do you get them to be trained in different areas? So the training arts journalism in South Africa only encompasses like music festivals, and there's no space for cultural journalism, which kind of takes into a wider consideration of other cultural issues. So when you talk about capacity building, like are there programs currently on the continent or otherwise that address this? Just from a professional practice and needs areas of practitioners. So that's what I identify in what Aya was saying, and I would like to maybe hear from around the table, are there programs that specifically play to this need? But I think, yeah, there's a value in terms of building a cultural association network, whether it's like an informal network through the internet or something that you can host a platform that people can engage from different sides. But I'm really interested in the educational aspect and finding out from you guys, are there programs that actually
Already exist. So, as far as I know, I don't. So the point of this will probably to even create one. I don't think, at least in Nigeria anyway, there's no sort of sustainable. Usually you have these one-offs that happen around an event. So just like you said, maybe music festivals in South Africa. For us, it's probably typically the only one thing, and it was even writing, not cultural journalism, is Chimamanda. She has this workshop she does every year in Nigeria. So is the...
I have to just make 1 minute to wrap up.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
So probably the aim is to sort of create, I guess, something you're thinking through a sort of standardized, I don't know, workshop that could answer to this need that we have identified. But at least in Nigeria, that doesn't currently exist. I don't know whether it exists in other countries.
I want to say something quickly. I think it's a matter of listening to you talk this morning. I'm thinking that there's no real demand for arts and culture journalism I guess at a popular level. And in Mauritius it's like that. We have very poor critical thinking when it comes to journalism. It's just reporting as youngsters get in, find a job, and they just come to work for a newspaper, and suddenly they just, okay, you take care of this, you go to the concert or whatever, and you report it. And suddenly they start, how to say, feature writing about these reports, or they start making these reports become feature writing, when it's quite, how do you say, dangerous, in the sense that it's up to, I guess, the journalists themselves to kind of understand whether a comment or a criticism or an evaluation or an assessment has, critical value. It's up to them to really develop themselves. Anyway, I was getting to that model where you have less demand, hence supply. Really, why would you train more journalists? You know what I mean? And then it's up to you, because I guess most good art and culture journalists never have a vocation. They really want to spread the word. They really want to help out the cultural and art sector. But then, if you look at just arts and culture, I guess cultural journalism is closer to anthropology. Please correct me if I'm saying something that's wrong. And art in itself is something that's quite special. And you have so many forms of expression of art, And then you have what establishment, institutions, policies, cultural policies per country dictate or impose as being one way of looking at those artistic practices. And then you have what human beings among themselves, just because they practice, come to, discern as being art or relevant performance.
So guys, we really have to wrap up.
Just 1 second, I think you should close it up.
Well, I'm just suggesting something everybody could think about. But yeah, there's so many layers to think about. But one layer that everybody kind of relates to is that there's survival at stake, and then what you do as soon or further to survive. Like I'm an promoter of art. Whatever I can. Let's look at 1 year. I'll do as many projects as I can, as as well as I can and trying to sound it out. At the end of the year, usually I don't even have money to, I don't know, to buy for, let's say for my parents or my brother and sister. But on the other side, I'm so happy that I have so much content I can send them throughout the year. But they'll criticize because it's too much, we don't read that much, or we can't attend all these concerts. Anyway, just saying, that's my position. And I think everyone here has a different position. And how you participate to, let's say, private sector or public sector or civil society, and try and remain alive, and then participating, will you not? That is, it's out of your will not to capitalistic culture and how we report to it. So I guess that's where we all are struggling. Anyway.
All right. Thank you, guys.